So in the last Lord of the Rings podcast, vlog, pushed up to my archive, these are under the board gaming playlist. We explored some of the starting strategies, some of the deck building strategies, and some of the DNA mechanics regarding Lord of the Rings. And I just kind of want to summarize that podcast a little bit because whatever your entry point is to this podcast, I feel like this foundation is important. One of the things when I started to play this amazing card game, looking at strategies and looking at different ways to build a deck, what I found challenging and what I continue to find challenging is the lack of definitive strategies out there because of the complexity of the game. So if you say, Fritz, what's a good deck to bring? Well, it's a living card game. What do you have access to? Do you have core? Do you have some of the sagas? Do you have some of the various cycle packs? And then on top of that, we layer on what cycle are you playing? And then on top of that, we layer on what characters, what heroes do you want to play? Are we going for like a Magic the Gathering Crush It build? Are you going for an all dwarf party? Are you trying to recreate the Fellowship? Is it more of a crushing card game versus kind of a role-playing narrative game? All different ways and all amazing ways to approach playing this game. So with all that's going on, it's hard to define a definitive strategy. So what we explored was the idea of understanding the rules, understanding the DNA that powers, the mechanics that power this card game, and to begin to ask the questions. What is your answer? How are you going to deal with this? And then this, and then this. And there's no right or wrong answer, but we need to have a answer on that. So that's kind of what we looked at. But I want to share a really powerful strategy that I have to give credit where credit's due. This strategy kind of transformed my game. It's a very simple strategy on there. And against some of the harder quests, it really made the difference, even with an optimized deck. And I learned this from a good friend of mine who we don't get to play Lord of the Rings enough. I mean, ideally every now and then, just spend like half a day or a couple of hours playing Lord of the Rings. He is an expert player. He's been in there since day one. He pretty much has all of the content. So it's really great because I get to, and I'm doing pretty well with my own collection, but I get to kind of preview some of the stuff or explore some of the different builds. And at the same time, there's a lot of quests that even though he's played through them, I've never played through them. So it's this duality. And he does his best not to spoil any of the quests or any of the kind of characters or challenges to encounter. And I'm going to carry that over into my Lord of the Rings podcast because I don't want to give that away. So I learned by watching. And I learned by seeing what he's doing. When is the last time? So you built your deck, you're ready to go. When is the last time? It's in the core, it's in the rule book, taking a mulligan, restarting, reshuffling your hand. Have you ever done that? That is a very, very powerful strategy, and that is a deck building specific strategy. And up to this point, where I would see him do it occasionally, I knew it was there. I didn't really understand it. I would build my deck with enough redundancy. I would sprinkle in a couple of the things that I wanted to play. So most of the time, my starting hand, it was okay. I got a little bit of something with what I wanted. So consider this possibility. Certainly, it's very easy to go attachment heavy, especially some of the weapon upgrades that are going to boost your attack power, some of the armor upgrades, even if they're a little pricey in resources, although there are ways to bring it down. The first challenge, and I made this mistake early on, was kind of going attachment crazy, upgrade crazy, where I wanted them to have a good chance of coming into play early on so I could attach them. The challenge with this is as soon as I did that, what did I really gain? Plus one, the boots, we're talking core, right? So no spoilers because everybody has the core. The boots, the axes, the horn, things like that to give you a +1 bonus you attach. Once that's done early on, now those are blank spaces in my deck that as they come up again, I'm not going to be able to utilize them. And I don't have things to maybe burn them. Occasionally, I might lose an attachment. It happens. There are some effects in the various quests, but even I can't give away any spoilers because I can't remember any specific instance, but it has happened every now and then. So for the most part, my deck building didn't require a mulligan. Now when we build, let's talk about the DNA for a second. At its core, Lord of the Rings is threat management. As soon as turn one begins, you are increasing your threat and you are against a hard timer that just on the power of the cards, regardless of the quest or the cycle, eventually you're going to get hit with something. You're going to get overwhelmed with, even if it's a combat heavy hero deck, you're going to get overwhelmed with some combat that's going to push the threat. It's going to take you a turn or two to cleave through it, to clean it up, but it's going to advance your threat. Every now and then, the way the combination of locations hit you up, you're going to have to kind of go through and quest through that and clean that up. So it's going to get ahead of you. And even if you have some cards in there to bring down threat, it's this constant timer. We talked about the need for exploration and really focusing on that and strategies there. So if I know that, when I need momentum, when I need everything to work really, really well, I need turn one. The power of turn one advantage, not player one or player two, the very first turn of the game, that is the most important. Yes, you could be playing a quest where you have to draw a card and it happens to be a hill troll or something really, really powerful on there. But on average, at the beginning of the game, that's when you are at your strongest. So when I pull out my starting hand, pre-game, I pull out my starting hand. If I, based on the cards that I have, based on my collection, if there are certain attachments, if there are certain card combos that I can build a little bit of redundancy and get into my deck that's going to really boost exploration, turn one, immediately close a location, or have some sort of massive momentum where it reduces the cost of resources and I can get a lot of allies in play really quickly, something to gain a massive advantage. We see this with chaining certain cards. If I'm playing with a standard tournament deck, if I get two chances to draw the cards, the starting hand, mulligan, draw again, there's a good chance if I build that deck, it will happen. I will pull that combination of cards and gain that tremendous advantage. Is that meta? I played Magic the Gathering many, many, many years ago when it first came out. And I just remember having a lot of cards and playing with my buddy Naps. And we kind of got into it. I like everything in gaming, I kind of went a little bit overboard, but we had absolutely no player base. I mean, Magic the Gathering was like unknown, and it was absolutely nothing on that. And I had no one to play with when Naps moved away, so I'm like, another buddy of mine who was getting into Magic, but our schedules were a little bit different. This was college. I was like, here you go, bro. I'll just give you all my Magic cards. No joke, 2 years later, he shows up with a newer car. He bought it used, but it was nice, really nice car. And I'm like, where'd you get, that's an awesome ride. He's like, yeah, I cashed out your Magic cards and got a car. And that's when I knew something was crazy with Magic. No joke. And that was then. So maybe this isn't new news to Magic players, or if you're used to a kind of meta living card game type thing, where if you're coming from a role-playing aspect, I was kind of coming from a role-playing aspect with Lord of the Rings, with Wargaming and Dungeons and Dragons and those narratives, it never really dawned on me to optimize a deck for turn one synergy, turn one combination, and stack the deck to deploy with the mulligan for that. As soon as I started to do that, massive, massive strategy. So if you're beginning this quest, Lord of the Rings card game, and you're looking into that, that is a viable, usable, very, very powerful strategy to bank in your war chest and to kind of plan for.